Okay, so welcome to Director Lesa McIntosh's award briefing. Welcome to San Pablo Reservoir. I'm Clifford Chan. I'm the General Manager for EBMUD. It's really great to have everyone here and be able to see people in person. And I can't tell you how tired I am of Zoom and Microsoft Teams. I think this is really the perfect location for an event like this, not only because it's beautiful, but also because we're in a drought. And I just want to do like a little quick history lesson. San Pablo Reservoir was built in 1919 by the East Bay Water Company, not to be confused with EBMUD. And it was built because the East Bay was suffering from this continued drought and water shortages. But even after San Pablo Reservoir was built, there were still water shortages. So in 1923, EBMUD was formed, and one of the first tasks was to find a more reliable, higher quality water supply. So we built Hardy Reservoir in the Sierra foothills. And in 1929, the summer of 1929, this East Bay was suffering from a multi-year drought. And in June 1929, water from Hardy Reservoir flowed into San Pablo Reservoir to get us out of the drought in the East Bay. So we haven't forgotten our history. We're learning from the past. You're going to hear from speakers today to talk about some of the great things that we're doing. But at this moment, I want to pass it off to Director Lesa McIntosh.
Good afternoon, everyone. Clifford didn't use the mic, so can you hear me?
Yes.
All right. Welcome, and thank you guys for coming. You know, I was a little hesitant about having an outdoor event in late October, but I think God has blessed us today. It's beautiful weather. So thank you guys for coming and braving this adventure. So I am Lesa McIntosh. I represent Ward 1. I serve the cities of Crockett, Hercules, Rodeo, and San Pablo, portions of Richmond and Pinole, and communities of North Richmond and Selby. Most people don't even know Selby exists. Today we will provide an update on our water supply, the current drought, ways our customers can conserve, our efforts to support diversity, equity, and inclusion, our infrastructure improvements in Ward 1, and our community programs. I know you're used to hearing that your drinking water starts as snow melt from the Mokelumne River watershed in the eastern Sierra Nevada mountains. Well, due to the drought, most of your drinking water starts as snow melt in the Sierra Nevada mountains. With drought and climate change, we are getting our water from other sources as well. In 1923, EBMUD was created from several failed water agencies, all looking for reliable ways to provide water to the East Bay. As EBMUD approaches its 100-year anniversary, we are still looking for reliable water sources for the East Bay. But we've made so much progress, and we've been very successful at it. Before we move further, I'd like to welcome some of our electeds. Devin Murphy, Mayor Pro Tem, Pinole. I don't see Devin. Chris Kelly, Council Member, City of Pinole. Hercules. Claudia Jimenez, Council Member, City of Richmond. Norma Martinez-Rubin, Council Member, City of Pinole. Cheryl Suddick, Vice President, West County Wastewater District. Henry Burke, District Rep for Congressman John Garamendi. Magdalena Olvera, District Rep for Mark Desaulniers. Sonia Bana, Contra Costa Mosquito and Vector Control District. Sonia Bustamante, Chief of Staff to Supervisor John Joya. I do see Perry Weiner here from West County Wastewater District, and David Alvarado, West County Wastewater District. Did I miss any? Oh, Nat Bates, City of Richmond. Annie Meredith.
He's going to become mayor.
Welcome, Annie.
He's going to be
West
mayor.
County Wastewater District as well. Did I miss anybody?
Maureen.
Yeah.
The Rodeo Sanitation District.
What's your first name?
Maureen Brennan.
Maureen Brennan. Welcome, Maureen. So, speaking of elected officials, we have someone very familiar, not just to all of you, but to the district here. Former East Bay Mud Board member and current county supervisor, John Joya. John, would you please say hello?
Thanks, Lisa. And I want to first acknowledge Lisa's great leadership on the East Bay Mud Board for the last 24 years. And I know it's been 24 years because Lisa took my place when I got elected to the Board of Supervisors 24 years ago.
I've been saying 22.
It's, time goes by so fast. I just wanted to say a couple things. And, you know, I did some of these when I was an East Bay Mud Director many years ago. And I think these updates are all great to really understand the work East Bay Mud's doing, which is amazing history here in the East Bay. You heard some of it. And I just wanted to say that we are so fortunate to be living in a part of the state that has really the highest quality drinking water anywhere in the state. I think you should know that. And it's because, you know, way back in the 1920s, leadership in the East Bay, including former Oakland Mayor and California Governor George Pardee, really established a whole group to combine and consolidate all the small water districts that lived in the East Bay and really go out and get a water source, the Mokelumne River and building Pardee Dam. And I had a chance to serve when I was first elected with Walt McLean, who was one of the engineers on Pardee Dam. And East Bay Mud is just, I think, a well-run public agency and has really strived to keep water rates low, you know, keep water flowing after an earthquake. When I was on the board in the 1990s, one of the things we started was the seismic improvement program, which was a $190 million program, and I know Mike will talk about the water system, to harden the East Bay Mud water system, to try to keep water flowing as much as possible after an earthquake. And I know I was on the East Bay Mud Board during Loma Prieta, and I remember how hard East Bay Mud worked to really fix the water system in those places where there were impacts. And I see there's directors from the West County Wastewater District. The East Bay Mud really focuses on partnerships with other agencies. And I know back in the 90s, we worked on a joint project with the wastewater district, taking all of your dry weather flow and building a tertiary water treatment plant and sending that water to the Chevron refinery. So instead of using potable water, they're using recycled water. So East Bay Mud does projects like that. And I know the update. And, you know, I have to say this, Mike Cognolini, who you're going to hear from, his dad and my dad were original teachers at Kennedy High School. And Don, you had his dad, right, for PE, and he was a baseball coach. It's great seeing the local folks. My point is, you grew up in El Sobrante and having local folks really rise up in the leadership of East Bay Mud, and Clifford grew up in the East Bay in the Piedmont area. So we have leadership in East Bay Mud that also grew up here within the service area in the East Bay, and I think that's great. So I think thanks, Lisa, for doing this, and thanks for your leadership. And I know you listen to people and try to incorporate what you hear from community, and East Bay Mud tries to be transparent. You know, I think we all have differences sometimes with other agencies, but they work hard at being transparent, and I think we're proud to have this water system and this partnership. And the last thing I'll say, and I know, Sahela, something you talked about in your role in El Sobrante, is we're assembling a team of county folks from Public Works and our Office of Emergency Services to work with East Bay Mud about doing an MOU for how water can be available for distribution after an earthquake. And I know some cities have already signed agreements on this. I think Pleasant Hill has, Danville has, so we're going to work on something for the unincorporated areas as well. So thanks, Lisa. Thanks for it's great working with you.
Thank you, John. He was a wonderful East Bay Mud Board Director, and he was even better at county supervisor, so thank you, John. As you know, in the middle of a drought, well, let me get Mike Cognolini up here. Mike will share more details. He is our Director of Water and Natural Resources for East Bay Mud. But I can tell you, this has been the driest January to June in the Mokelumne Watershed on record. Mike will talk about our current water supply and how we are expanding our water resources.
Good afternoon, everyone. It's nice to see you all, and John, thank you for mentioning my background and history growing up Richmond, El Sobrante here. And that really was what got me interested in coming to East Bay Mud is during the 1970s, you remember the 1976-77 drought, really the most devastating drought we've ever had, even to this day. Two of the driest years we ever saw. And I remember those days of bricks in toilets and brown lawns and everything that we went through at the time to reduce our water use. We've learned a lot since then, and East Bay Mud has a lot more tools available to respond to drought than we did back in the 70s. As Director McIntosh mentioned, the January through June period was the driest January through June we've ever experienced. We were fortunate that we had a wet October last year and then a pretty wet December as well. So we were able to get through the year, but we're still in a drought. And the result of all that was that in April of this year, our board declared a stage 2 drought emergency, which meant that we were implementing mandatory customer reductions of up to 10%, and as well as implementing our supplemental water supply program, so bringing in additional water supplies from other sources that we normally don't use. The results have been really phenomenal. Our customers have done a great job of saving water. We've asked for 10%. We've been achieving in June 12%, July 16%, August 14%, September 13%, October 14%. So we're doing better than what we've been asking for from our customers. So thank you to all of you who've spread the word and done your part to make sure that we're doing what we can to reduce our water use during this time. The good news is the result of all that saving and the result of our board going out and procuring additional water supplies is that we're in better condition now as a company, East Bay Mud, in terms of water supply than we were 12 months ago. So we have more water now stored and available for next year than we did going into 2022. So that's the good news. That doesn't mean we can stop saving. We've got to keep saving and keep taking action to make sure that we can stretch our water as far as we can. The forecast now, looking to 2023, is that we're expecting another La Nina year, which means cold temperatures in the southern Pacific Ocean, which is exactly what we had in 2020 and 2021 and 2022, which is what resulted in the drought of the last couple of years. Now, La Nina does not mean that we're always going to have a dry year. In Northern California, the predictions can vary from very dry to very wet. So we don't really know for sure, but the indication from the last 2 La Ninas were that those years resulted in drought. So we have to be prepared. We don't know for sure, but we've got to be prepared that next year could also be dry. So what is our long-term plan? What are we doing to make sure that we're ready for these droughts as they come, and they will continue to come as they have since the 70s and before? What do we do to make sure that we've got water supply available for our customers to meet our needs and our economy and our communities? We have a long-term plan that we update every 5 years. It's called an Urban Water Management Plan, and it's based on another document called a Water Supply Management Program. Those documents really look 30 years into the future. So in 2020, we were looking out to the year 2050, and we were looking at not just our current use, but what is the expected population growth and development? What are the effects of climate change? What new regulations could be in place? So we've already considered all of that when we lay out our plan for developing water supplies so that we can be sure that we have enough water for our customers all the way out into the future. And so what we've come up with really is a diverse portfolio. We have a number of different part elements in place to make sure that we can meet those needs. And it starts with making sure our customers use water effectively. So we have a conservation program. You're going to be hearing a little bit more about that from Alice Towey in a minute. And then we have a water recycling program, as Supervisor Joya mentioned. We've got a big water recycling program with West County wastewater to serve the Chevron refinery. And that doesn't mean Chevron's the beneficiary. It means all of our customers are the beneficiary, because by using that recycled water to serve in industrial use, that means all the rest of our customers have more drinking water available. So The fact that you may not be receiving recycled water doesn't mean that you're not a beneficiary of the recycled water program, which stretches across all of East Bay Mud. It also includes irrigation in San Ramon and irrigation in the Oakland and Emeryville areas at the moment. And our plan is to expand that recycled water program by doubling the size of the program by the year 2040. So our plan is to continue to do more and more water recycling going forward. All right, so in addition to that, another important element of our diverse portfolio is that during a drought, we plan for a certain amount of cutback to happen automatically for our customers. So we plan for 85% reliability in our water service during a drought, which means we plan for customers to be cutting back by about 15%. And the reason we do that is because to secure enough water and enough storage and enough dams and enough other facilities to provide 100% reliability is very, very expensive. And we need to keep in mind that our customers, affordability is an issue for many, many of our customers. So we balance how much water supply and reliability is appropriate, and our board has said about 85% is appropriate, and how do we manage to make sure that we're keeping our rates affordable. So that's an element of the program. And then, of course, we bring in additional sources of supply, like we bring in water supply from the Sacramento River, from our Freeport Regional Water Project, which diverts water, and we've been using it this year. We brought in about 1/3 of our water supply in the year 2022 came from Freeport, from that supplemental source. So that was a major source of supply for us. And in the future, we're looking to develop groundwater storage. We're part of a partnership to investigate storing additional water in Los Vaqueros Reservoir in Brentwood by expanding that reservoir, making it higher, so there's more storage available. And then further out in the future, even beyond the 10 and 20-year horizon, we want to look at other sources of supply, because we're never going to rest on how much water supply reliability we have. And we want to consider things like desalination or potable reuse. So we're reusing recycled water for drinking water purposes by purifying it. So those are all part of our portfolio, both near-term and long-term, that we've got in place that we're developing to make sure we have a reliable water supply for years to come at East Bay Mud. So we're following our plan. We're doing that today. We're at 10% mandatory cutbacks. And what I would say is that now is the time for us to take action to cut back our water use, but it is not a time to panic. We're following that plan, and we're going to continue to do that. So with that, I'm going to turn the conversation over to Alice Toohey, who's going to talk about our conservation program.
Thanks so much, Mike. So my name's Alice Toohey. I'm the manager of water conservation at East Bay Mud, which is a very fun job. And the main thing that I want to say today is thank you. Because like you heard Mike say, we're in the midst of this historic drought. It's affecting not just California, the whole western U.S., even other parts of the world that, aren't used to having drought or experiencing drought. And we're very lucky at East Bay Mud that our customers have really responded. As Mike mentioned, we asked for 10% conservation. We've been exceeding that all summer. And that's largely thanks to you, your work as not just as residents, but as, cities, county officials. It's those partnerships that really help us to achieve those savings. So thank you for that. I do want to just give a little bit of information more about conservation, because the other thing that we want to think about when we're thinking about conservation is it's not just for drought, right? We know we live in California. It's a very dry climate. Conservation is a big part of our water supply portfolio going forward, like Mike mentioned. We did a study a few years ago, and we quantified that going back to like the 1990s, we've collectively achieved 46 million gallons per day of water conservation in the East Bay. That's a huge amount of water. I can't even conceive of how much water that is. But we want to do more. Our long-term goal is to reach 70 million gallons a day of conservation by the year 2050. So that's a very ambitious goal, but I think we can do it. So I want to talk a little bit today about some of the programs we have to help you and your constituents save water, and we hope that you'll partner with us. There's basically 3 things that we ask folks to do when we're thinking about conservation, and a lot of it's very common sense. We're asking folks to irrigate efficiently, to be mindful of their indoor water use, and to find and fix leaks. So I'm going to talk about each of those a little bit. In terms of efficient irrigation, that's a huge one, because we know that a lot of the major source of kind of discretionary water use is outdoor water use in the summer. It's people irrigating their lawns. We have a ton of resources on our website. We have irrigation schedulers, calculators. We have water budgets that can help you figure out how to irrigate efficiently. And again, that goes for whether you're a resident or whether you're a city or a county that's managing facilities. We have those tools available. We also offer rebates. I always have the fun job of, sort of giving our money away. So I'm glad our Director of Finance isn't here to hear me say that today. We have rebates for lawn replacement. We actually just increased the dollar amounts of those rebates this summer. So you can now get up to $2.50 per square foot for a lawn replacement. And we have a lot of tools and tips to help you in that process, because I know sometimes it's hard to figure out, well, I'm going to get rid of my lawn, but what am I going to do? And again, that's not just for residential customers, right? Like, we also offer those programs for cities, for institutions, schools, parks can take advantage of those programs. For institutional customers, we offer up to a total of $15,000 per site. So if you have facilities that have a lawn, we like to say in water conservation, if the only person who's walking on that lawn is pushing a lawnmower, you probably want to get rid of it and put in something efficient, right? If nobody's actually sort of using it. We also just last year launched a rebate specifically for medians. Because I know, you think about those little strips of grass between the street and the sidewalk, and those are really hard to irrigate efficiently. So again, we offer $2.50 to replace those. I also want to just mention the fact that I know, for some folks thinking about getting rid of their lawn, it's a little bit of a paradigm shift, right? So another thing that we really are trying to do is get folks to think differently about landscaping and realize, how lovely and useful a water efficient landscape can be. And part of that paradigm shift is we offer grants for demonstration gardens. So that's another place where we work a lot with cities and counties and schools and community groups. A really good example is the Richmond Dry Garden. That was a partnership between EBMUD, the City of Richmond, and the UC Master Gardeners of Contra Costa County. So I encourage you to check out that demonstration garden. It's absolutely gorgeous. So that's another place where we would love to partner with you. And we're also very interested in working with HOAs. I know, again, sometimes, HOAs folks don't necessarily think about, getting rid of those lawns, but that can, again, putting in a beautiful water efficient landscaping can save a lot of water and save a lot of money as well. So I also mentioned one of the other things we're asking folks to do is be mindful of their indoor water use. We've come a long way. Mike was mentioning, we used to ask people to put a brick in their toilet. The good news is, most homes at this point have efficient fixtures and appliances, but we are still asking folks to just be mindful. One thing we did last year is we had a bunch of ads that we were running on, I think it was Pandora, where we were suggesting 5-minute shower songs to folks, so you can kind of, time yourself and try to take a shorter shower. If you're a single family residential customer, you can actually come to our website and order a home survey kit. So that's just, I've got some examples up there. It's got a little booklet and some toilet dye tabs and some other tools to help you assess the efficiency of your house. If you fill out the little form and send it to us, we will send you free stuff. We will send you faucet aerators, shower heads. Like I said, my job is the best because I get to give all this stuff away. And along those lines, we do have toilet dye tabs up there. So if you're worried that your toilet might be leaking, check. And then the last thing that I mentioned that we're asking folks to do again is find and fix leaks, because that's another major source of kind of water waste. It's another easy way for us to, conserve water without making any kind of lifestyle changes. So again, we have a lot of tools and resources on our website to help you with that. If you sign up for EBMUD's web portal, and again, whether you're a residential customer or a city or a business, you can sign up on our portal. You can monitor your consumption. And if we have your email address, we will also send you leak alerts. These are one of the coolest things ever. This is one of the ways that the industry is really advanced in terms of water conservation, is we have software that will kind of monitor your water use. And if we see something that looks weird, if we see that all of a sudden your water use has gone up and it's kind of consistently high, we'll just send you an email that says, hey, you might want to check this. And we've got a link to resources on our website that will walk you through identifying common leaks. And then I do want to mention also, last but by no means least, we have a lot of really amazing, talented staff in water conservation. They're super, super passionate about this. They love working with customers. So, if you have questions about your water use, if you want to save water, if you just want to kind of understand some of our programs, give us a call. We love working with customers. We'll do audits. We'll do webinars for community groups. We really do love engaging with the community. So again, I just want to say thank you for all that you are doing collectively to help us reach this target of saving water for the future. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Derry Moten, who's the Special Assistant and the Manager of our Office of Diversity, Equity, and Culture. And he's going to talk a little bit about all the great things EBMUD's doing in terms of diversity, equity, and inclusion.
Thank you, Alice, and good afternoon, everybody. We are very excited to share with you some of the work that's been happening in East Bay MUD in terms of diversity, equity, and inclusion. And many of you who have been around East Bay MUD for a long time know that East Bay MUD has had a contract equity program for over close to 40 years. Our diversity inclusion inclusion office has a long history as well. However, over the last several years, one of the things that has been a driver largely at the hands of Director McIntosh has been the thought that we not only need to be doing the work, but we need to be very strategic about how the work is done in this area. So one of the things that happened on February 22nd of this year is we have our board passed our first diversity, equity, and inclusion strategic plan. And that strategic plan is built on 5 specific pillars that I'm going to talk to you a little bit about today. So pillar 1 is about leadership commitment. And in order for any program like this to be successful, there has to be high levels of commitment from the leadership group to make sure that we not only talk about items, but we actually deliver on those items. And so our leadership team has been very involved in both the crafting of our strategic plan and also looking at how do we also engage employees in the leadership of the program as well. So our diversity, equity, inclusion program has governance from our senior leadership, but it also has governance from the office that I'm a part of, as well as governance specifically from 3 employee-led groups that all work in different aspects of the work. The first is our diversity committee, which is made up of members of our specific affinity groups, which we have 5 different affinity groups within the organization. That group then works on looking at issues about how we guide outreach, how we participate and continue to try to diversify the workforce. The second group is our equity core team that looks specifically at how we address issues that may fall into the area of systemic problems when it comes to race and gender and how we onboard people and do outreach into to the organization. And the third is our values advocates who work on work culture and inclusion factors. So our overall approach to leadership kind of, again, is shared leadership both with employees and with our organizational leaders. The second area is workforce diversity. And as I mentioned, one of the things that we want to continue to look at is how we can continue to diversify the workforce. The water and wastewater industry is quite naturally a male-dominated industry. And so we want to make sure that we're also looking at ways we can diversify our workforce by identifying ways that we can recruit more women into the industry. Also, how can we continue to recruit more ethnic minorities into the work that we do. So that work is kind of broken into a couple of tiers. The first tier is looking at the way we actually try to expand entry into the organization. So that entry level focuses on creating and implementing internships that are in multiple areas of our work. An engineering internship, our internships around also trying to find ways to bring young people from our high school program, and then also looking at how we can continue to expand those programs. The second side is then looking at our trades and how can we continue to recruit and identify talented people to come into the organization in the construction trades and within our operations departments as well, which looks like water treatment operators, our plumbers, our we have an internal pipeline academy which brings people in and allows them to kind of learn the plumbing trade from an industrial perspective and get into careers that are broken into a couple of different pathways that an individual can continue to excel at. Then there's the next level, which is thinking about no matter how well you recruit for diversity, there's still an issue of how do you help people feel included and have a sense of belonging once they come into the organization. So our third pillar is about building an inclusive culture. And that inclusive culture work looks at how we continue to train leaders, how do we continue to allow people to recognize how to build that inclusive culture. That also gets into thinking about issues of building opportunities for employees internally to find connection points, which gets into how our affinity groups work, some of our additional interest groups that work within the organization to give people opportunities to connect beyond just their work groups and also work to strengthen their longevity and retention in the organization. The fourth is our contract equity area. So we have a fourth pillar, which is called supplier diversity. Supplier diversity is focused on how we show up in terms of looking at the district's economic footprint and how do we continue to recruit local businesses, minority businesses, women-owned businesses to participate in contracting opportunities within the district. And what we've tried to do with this is to continue to look at how do we continue to build connections between local either civic organizations or business organizations to participate in our external advisory group, to continue to help us spread the word in terms of contracting opportunities and build relationships that we can continue to look at how can we keep making our process as efficient as possible to allow for small businesses to become part of our organization. And the fifth area, strategic pillar for our strategic plan is about social responsibility. And social responsibility thinks about how we show up in terms of environmental justice, how do we look at our overall impacts, how can we continue to do a lot of the work that Mike's team works on in terms of management of these external resources and access that people have. That also looks at how do we continue to make sure that we are working towards building community education that's around the water and wastewater industry. So that gets into our high school program. We have high school intern program, but we also have a K through 12 education program. And that K through 12 education program is aimed on making sure that young people are aware of the resource that their local water agency is. How do we continue to educate them about the careers and opportunities that are within this field as well? So those things together make up our strategic approach to diversity, equity, and inclusion. And a lot of work goes into how we conduct outreach, how we continue to make connection with the community and develop long-term partnerships. And we talk about things like how we are doing that outreach specifically around workforce development. It includes our work directly with local community colleges. We have partnerships that we've been doing with Peralta Community College and providing an on-site learning program for our internal employees for their opportunities to promote. Also, we will work with them to also look at some of their pre-apprentice programs that they're doing. How do we connect those programs to our learning opportunities and employment opportunities in the district? And then finally, we've also tried to make sure that we are very, very intentional about how we show up in different places, which is making sure that we're bringing representation of some of our plumbers, bringing representation of some of our equipment to job fairs to allow young people and others who are interested to actually connect with the opportunities and actually see what the work is actually like, to get opportunities to see what a truck is like, see what type of equipment is used, see what a work site actually looks like. So those are the things that we continually try to do as we continue to develop and grow the program here. So we look forward to seeing some of you as we continue to build those relationships and have opportunities to share more about what we do. And at this point, I'm going to turn this over to our General Manager, Clifford Chan.
Thank you, Darius. So I want to talk a bit about our infrastructure projects. You heard from Director McIntosh that East Bay MUD will turn 100 next year. And we hope to see a lot of you, if not all of you, at our centennial event. You also heard from Supervisor Joya that George Pardee, former governor of California, spearheaded the formation of these public water agencies, moving away from those private water agencies. But East Bay MUD, we were formed really through the combination of literally dozens of smaller water companies. And we inherited all of that infrastructure that we have to manage today. Just a bit of trivia, the first water company in the East Bay was started by Anthony Chabot. Anthony Chabot built Lake Temescal, and then of course Chabot Reservoir is named, it wasn't called Chabot Reservoir at the time. Bit of trivia, Anthony Chabot, before he came to the East Bay to form the water company, he started the first water company in San Francisco. And you've probably been to the reservoir in San Francisco and not known it. How many people here have been to Lombard Street, standing at the top of Lombard, looking down the curviest road on the planet? Turn around, you'll see tennis courts. Underneath those tennis courts is a reservoir. Wow. Go a couple of blocks over, they decommissioned that other reservoir. It's now Francisco Park, right above Ghirardelli Square. That was the first reservoir that he built. And he piped water from the Presidio over to those reservoirs. And it was actually a nice display. So you can see a lot of the infrastructure. The oldest infrastructure we have is over 150 years old. So we are investing in our infrastructure because all those other water companies, as you heard Director McIntosh say, all those other water companies failed for 3 reasons. 1, they couldn't provide a reliable water supply. 2, they couldn't provide a high quality water supply. And number 3, they couldn't keep water affordable. So we are investing billions of dollars in our infrastructure to ensure that we have a reliable, high quality water supply. And by the investments that we're making, we're also going to be able to address the issues that you heard Mike and others talk about. We can adapt to climate change. We can deal with things like earthquakes. We can deal with changing regulations. I'm going to talk about a few projects both within this ward, but also outside this ward because it affects you. One of the biggest projects East Bay MUD has ever embarked on is an upgrade of Orinda Water Treatment Plant in Orinda. It's a $300 million project. Now, while it's not in the ward, Orinda Water Treatment Plant serves this ward and every community west of the hills from late fall to early spring. That improvement will help us be more adaptable to climate change, changing water quality standards, and improved water quality. The other project that we completed just a couple of years ago that serves this ward is at Sobrani Water Treatment Plant. And we upgraded the ozone system to deal with taste and odor issues. Now we're doing another project in this reservoir. We're adding an oxygenation system that will improve water quality. That project will be completed next year. The other thing that we're spending a lot of money on, because we've inherited 150-year-old pipes, is we're investing in the pipes. And within Ward 1, last year we replaced 10 miles of pipe. This year right now we have 12, about a dozen active projects in Ward 1 that's going to replace another 6.5 miles of pipe. Now, while we invest in all the infrastructure, we can't lose sight of the fact that we have to keep water affordable. And we know it's challenging for those who are on the lower end of the income scale. We have a customer assistance program. It's 36 years old, but it is the most generous customer assistance program in the state of California. You can get a discount up to 50% on your water bill if you qualify for the program, and we have a very high level, income level for qualification into that program. And if you still are struggling to pay your bill, contact East Bay MUD. Let people know, contact East Bay MUD. We'll sign you up for payment plans to help you with your bills. The other thing that we're doing is a lot of education and outreach. And so we want to teach people about the work we do. We want them to understand water and wastewater. And we have new educational materials for K through 12 that's going to be released shortly. We also have a Water Wednesday webinar series. If you want to learn about water, if you want to learn about the history of East Bay MUD, if you want to learn about desalination, if you want to learn about wildfires, that is a great place to learn about East Bay MUD. And I want to just plug one of them. On November 16th at 6 p.m., our next one is called Seeking the Source. And we have 2 people that traveled from the East Bay all the way up to the Sierra Nevada, tracing the path of the water. And we're going to interview them and you're going to hear their story. The other thing that we did this year to get the community to understand what we do is we launched our first Community Water Academy. And Sohaila here was one of the graduates from the program. We took the participants in the program to visit various facilities at East Bay MUD, tell them what we do, show them the work that we do, and answer all the questions that we have. And I know Sohaila had many, many questions, and we really liked her within that program. So we have lots of information that we want to share with you about East Bay MUD. And we have staff here to answer any questions that you may have. And at this point, I want to hand it back to Director McIntosh.
Thank you, Clifford. As usual, thank everyone who presented today. So a few more facts about East Bay MUD. So we represent approximately 1.4 million customers and about approximately 700,000 wastewater customers. So the 1.4 water customers and 700,000 or so wastewater customers. We have some 2,000 employees, 4 labor unions, and governed by a 7-member board of directors. So I happen to just be Ward 1. Normally, each director has a ward briefing every year. And I've done that here in my ward. My last was May of 2019. And then COVID happened in 2020 and 2021 and part of 2022. So this is actually my first ward briefing here in West County since May of 2019. So again, thank you all for coming. I really appreciate it and love your interest in this issue. And you know, I and our staff, we get so excited talking about water. And I can see some people have blank faces. They don't get it. But my personal goal is to make sure you all get it and you really understand where this precious resource comes from and you're able to appreciate it, because we are so blessed. Pastor Dale mentioned earlier Flint, Michigan, and those water horrors. We don't have those issues here at East Bay Mud. And I am so proud to be a representative. So with that, the staff is here to answer any questions. Chris.
Yeah, Chris Kelly from the City of Hercules. So one of the questions that I get from a number of residents is about East Bay Mud. And by the way, I really appreciate everything you do, Lisa, and East Bay Mud. One of the questions is, they will say, hey, East Bay Mud has been asking us to conserve. So I conserve year after year after year. And I've gotten to the point where, you know, I can't conserve anymore. You know, do you have any solutions to that? Are there things that I can say other than people turning to like purple pipes and, you know, taking the water from their
Gray water.
gray water and then somehow using that for their landscaping?
We understand that there's hardening. You know, we get that. And some people have been conserving for so long, they just don't have any more to give.
Yeah.
Clifford, do you want to add anything
Yeah,
to that?
I mean, again, you know, we really appreciate those people who are what we call our super savers. And when we set the goal to say we want, you know, you to reduce your consumption by 10%, we mean 10% district-wide, you know, overall.
Not at your house.
Not necessarily your house. So
My neighbor's house, when they're coming
Yeah.
and
So
complaining.
what I would say is, if your neighbor comes to you and says, hey, I am a super saver, what we would tell you to say to them is, great job, keep it up.
Okay.
Because you're already doing your part. So we do need other people who maybe can do more to do more. But those are saving a lot, good job.
Okay.
And just keep doing it. You know, you do what you can do.
And I've got a second question, and that is, well, many of you know who work in cities that we have these housing goals called RENA goals, and we are to, you know, build more housing if we possibly can, you know, in our city and our county and so forth. So how is this going to affect East Bay Mud? Because that'll bring in more households with more use. And will you say to these developers, hey, don't put in lawns if you don't need lawns, or, you know, encourage them to do low water landscaping?
Sure, and Clifford briefly spoke about this a few minutes ago. And I mean, we take into account all of the development that we know is coming down the pipeline. I don't know how many years we can
Yeah, so-
track it.
So we've done a demand study that goes out to 2050 and met with all the cities to look at all their plans. And we factored all that into the water supply plan that Mike Tognolini talked about. And that's why, you know, you'll see us. We do have increased goals for conservation. We do have increased goals for recycle, because we need to factor in to keep that target of 85% reliability for the water supply. So we have taken all that information into account, and we also require all that new construction, Alice can speak to it more, requiring them to put in water efficient fixtures and landscaping.
Yeah, and I'll just mention that. That's a great question. Thank you. So yeah, like Clifford said, you know, East Bay Mud in our regulations, we have actually Section 31 of our regulations is on sort of water efficiency for new development. So any application that comes in for new service, if it's just a house or if it's a full-scale housing development, my staff actually reviews to make sure that it has, like, we actually look at, they have to give us cut sheets for their, like, you know, plumbing fixtures, for their shower heads, so we can make sure they're efficient. A big part of that is enforcing what's called the California Model Water Efficient Landscape Ordinance, MWELO. I know it's a big acronym, but basically what that means is California as a state has laws around new landscaping for new development. So again, we check that to make sure, there's limits on how much lawn people can put in, there's rules about what type of irrigation system. So for new development, we do review that very, very carefully, absolutely.
Okay, and just one thing I want to add as a city official, and that is right now, I know Myrna over there, Norman over there is looking at me. The cities are now about to submit their housing elements for up to 2023, and what that means is it's not the housing that we plan to build, but it's the housing that we could possibly build. We may or may not build it. So I would urge you to take a look at all those housing elements when they are finally filed, and base a lot of your figures on that.
What are they filed with, Chris?
With the
Is it
state.
State of
Yeah,
California?
with the state.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll get in contact with you.
That would be great. So all cities are required?
To file a housing element, they have to plan for housing, even if the housing doesn't get built.
Okay.
Some cities plan for a little, but like a city like San Ramon, they have to plan for adding 5,000 units
Sure.
up through 2023.
Yeah, and-
That could have a big effect.
And we're aware of all those housing element goals, again, not
Okay.
just of what you can build, but when you actually get to the time of building it, we wanna make sure that our processes are such that, you can build it quickly.
Got it. Thank you.
Don?
Thank you. I just want to let you know first off that some of us actually listen to what you've been telling us year after year after year. I've been conserving, and for the past couple of decades, I live in a house, not an apartment. I'm down to 12 gallons a day. And so when I read in the newspaper yesterday about the CEO of Chevron using more than 1,000 times a day more than me, I can't believe how many times is he flushing that toilet? I mean, it can't be just that. But second thing on there, I've had an occasion to spend extended periods of times on ships, on expeditions, small ships, where they had to manufacture their own fresh water. So conservation was critical to life, not just a convenience. And we had shower devices on the shower heads where you pulled it down and it was shut off after a very short period of time. We were limited to 3 minutes per day for showers. But I wish I could find one of those valves to install in my own house. But it's something you might try to do. Not everybody would want to do it, but I bet you a lot of people would do it, especially if you offer to go install it. It's quick and simple, if you know what you're doing.
Well, you haven't even been able to find it, right?
I have not been able to find it, but you guys may have a little bit more resources
Yeah,
than I do.
We do.
You probably know
Right.
somebody outside of Amazon, maybe.
Yeah, and it's so interesting about showers. So even Alice talked about now, we're at 5-minute showers would be great. Most people probably don't adhere to that, but that is the absolute goal. But when you talk about 12 gallons per day, I mean, that's amazing, Don. And do you live alone?
Yes, I do. And also, when I get one of those bills where it went up to 13 gallons a day for the
Yeah.
period, I mean, it actually bothers me. What did I do during that period? I screwed up about a month ago and I actually washed my car. I'm sorry, Grand Prix Auto was $48 to wash my minivan. I couldn't do that anymore.
Yeah.
But I
No,
felt
that's
bad.
great. So we'll check into it, Don.
He obviously doesn't have any teenage or young man
I
living.
told you I was by myself. I'm a bachelor.
That's what I mean. You don't have any young men living at your house.
John, and then
Yeah, little people.
Before I make my comment, Dawn, at 12 gallons a day, and you don't even smell. I mean, that's amazing. When I was on the board, that's got to set a record, 12 gallons a day. That's like the lowest I've ever drank.
good job.
I had sort of two questions or comments. One on the issue of homeowners. I know several years ago, and I applaud East Bay Mud for this, there were homeowners, including many in our area, including my own, that required people to put in grass. And East Bay Mud, I think LA Department of Water, Power, and some other water districts co-sponsored a bill, state law, that basically says homeowners associations can't do that anymore. They have to adhere to the standards, and so they've been doing that mostly. So I'm interested to know, are there any homeowners associations locally that you've had issues with or pushing back on the new native plantings? Because these, as you know, they're original CC&Rs when the homes are built, so you have to have a lawn in some of them. Right.
Yeah, no, that's a great question, and it is interesting working with HOAs because there are sometimes those issues with CCNRs and like issues about that it's a little bit of a different thing. It's one thing for me as a homeowner to say I want to rip out my lawn. It's another thing when it's like a communal landscape.
Right.
One thing we have actually had several HOAs at this point who have done lawn replacement projects, and one thing that we're trying to work on more and more is creating forums for HOAs to learn from each other. We have what's called our Landscape Advisory Council, that's a committee that's been in place since I think the 80s. We actually had a really interesting virtual, of course, meeting last year where we got together a whole bunch of HOAs, including a few that had done lawn replacement projects, who talked about it, who talked about their process, who basically were able to say, you know what, we did it and it's okay, it's fine, property values haven't gone down, nobody's complaining. So I think that's a big part of it is just sometimes, people just, nobody wants to be the first to do it, right? But like with the lawn replacements, the more agencies, homeowner associations that do it, the more I think others do. And just to touch on one other thing you said, that is true. There is actually a state law in place now that basically says homeowners associations cannot penalize customers for obeying local drought restrictions. So it's pretty rare these days. Every once in a while, we will hear from a customer who says, "Hey, I was trying to water 3 days a week or less, but at my HOA." I got in trouble, and we will, in that case, we'll provide information on those state laws and reach out to those folks.
The other issue is more maybe how East Bay Mud can help on some other goals. I know water heater replacements, especially when they start leaking, are important, and you encourage those things. So the State Air Board and the Bay Area Quality Management District are working to develop rules that will take effect in a number of years to look at requiring gas water heaters to be replaced with electric, and specifically that new technology, electric heat pumps, which are way more efficient than the old electric and gas water heaters. And there's now some on the market that can run on 120 volts, 15 amps, so you don't need 220 volts, which is a big, huge game changer. So it would be helpful when you get information out to people, look to East Bay Mud on issues like that, on like water heater replacements, to also try to align with some of the other regional goals, and in this case, helping educate customers about the new technology and access to to 220 volt water heaters, and to be helpful. Maybe that's a discussion with the Bay Area Quality Management District. So just wanted to, because rather than we have different, so you wouldn't want to be pushing gas while there's a state and regional goal to move toward the electric heat pumps, which
John,
are way more efficient.
Is there a funding mechanism for that?
That's one of the things, when Air District has assembled because that's why the rule won't take effect till like 2030. It's working with manufacturers and organizations to subsidize that among we've talked about this, among low-income homeowners, because we can't expect them to pay more, so that's why it's going to take several years. But I just think this would be a great thing for East Bay Mud to be part of that conversation.
I'd love to be a part of that, John. Thank you.
Yes.
Claudia Jimenez, I am a city council in Richmond, and I get excited about water. I did a master at UC Berkeley in environmental planning, and my thesis was about green infrastructure and stormwater management. So I get excited.
You get it.
I get it. So one of the things that, I have 3 questions. So one is about, in terms of conservation, some of homeowners would like to have more built-in systems to collect their own water, for instance, from the shower, like gray water. Sometimes, like, the regulation has been a little bit kind of like easy, but it's still, it's not out there in terms of like everybody can start doing that, and so I just wonder what is out there and how cities can partner to really make sure that great water is one thing. And my second question around that is around the green infrastructure, like how to kind of like partner with cities to build more green infrastructure, like Portland rains more, so they have more. But we just got recommended, a city of Richmond got recommended to get the grant. It's called the TCC, which is it's going to bring $35 million to the city of Richmond. And one of the things that we are hoping that EBMUD can play a role is to, with the water smart landscaping and be a formal partner on the resident install. So we will be talking to you more about that if we finally get the yes for that grant. So my question in the green infrastructure is also that one thing that I see from the cities is that when you change from a landscaping, it requires more maintenance. So how that maintenance could be also supported by EBMUD, like cities like Richmond are dealing with like budget situation, with vacancy situation where we don't have all the staffing to do the landscaping. So these are my two questions, and then.
Yeah, awesome, thank you, Kanisha. So on gray water, yes, we do support gray water, we have a rebate. So gray water is a little bit challenging. I'm sorry, I don't want to have my back to anybody, so I'm gonna step over here. Gray water, there's kind of two types of systems. The easiest one to do is what's called a laundry to landscape. So that basically, you take water that's like coming out of the rinse cycle, out of your washing machine, you can just, either have it go to storage, or in most cases, people just have it running in a pipe out to their landscape. Those do not require a permit from the county health department. Those are pretty easy to do. We offer a rebate for those. I think it's $50 for the little diverter. And we have a lot of information on our website. We've done some webinars with like Gray Water Action on how to install those. If people want to do more complicated gray water systems where they're taking water from like, showers or other appliances, it gets a little tricky, and in that case you do need a permit from the county because, as you're using some of these different sources of water, some of them can have materials that, we want to just make sure are not hazardous to human health. But yeah, absolutely, we do support gray water. In terms of sort of green infrastructure and stormwater catchment, that was just a lovely reminder to me that I need to plug. We actually have a webinar today at 5:30 on rainwater harvesting. So it's going to be us and the Watershed project, and which I think is based out of, I want to say Richmond. Yeah, Richmond. And then we do also have a East Bay MUD customer who's put in an extensive rainwater catchment system, who's going to kind of, take us around and demo it a little bit. That's going to be in English and then also in Spanish. Rolando is going to be translating for us. So that is available if folks are interested in that. We definitely do love to partner with cities on those types of projects. Like I mentioned, we have a demonstration garden grant program, so that could be a really good opportunity, especially if it's a garden if it's in like a public place that's kind of showcasing rainwater catchment. That is something we would love to partner with the city on. In terms of maintenance, that's a really great question. Right now we tend to fund putting these projects in. We currently don't have sort of funding at East Bay MUD for like the sort of long-term maintenance of the projects. But one thing that I can suggest that we do like to talk about a lot as well is partnerships. For example, I mentioned we have that partnership with the Richmond Dry Garden up on, I think that's along the Richmond, like, it's along that sort of like bike path area. So that was actually a partnership with the city and with the UC, University of California Master Gardeners. So they're doing a lot of the like maintenance and sort of programming and planning for activities around that garden. So that's a possibility as well, as looking for other community groups, because a lot of times, like the Master Gardeners are amazing. I mean, they are super, super gung-ho about this stuff. They love, partnering with cities, with East Bay MUD, and they will oftentimes really be interested in kind of having an active role in maintaining those gardens. We've also been having conversations with them about a demonstration garden we have about San Pablo. It's the same thing. They want to do programming and management and actually do activities at our facilities. So that, I mean, at the moment, like I said, unfortunately we don't have funding for sort of long-term maintenance, but that's something we can maybe talk about is, if there's partnerships available with local groups that could help.
And my last question,
Yeah.
thank you. And my last question is about green jobs. So we had Richmond Works and we had Youth Works, and we would like to see what partnership we want. Like you mentioned, green jobs. So I think there is a big opportunity for us to start to looking into how we can create a pipeline for Richmond youth. We created actually 500 youth employees all year round, and one of the things that we are doing is placing these youth in different small businesses or in different government entities. And I think like that is an opportunity to partner with youth to see if we can actually place some youth and also expand that program with some funding from EBMUD. I'm just pitching like more money for the other
Everybody, and you know, we also need to do more locally with urban gardens. I've been asked recently about supplying local urban gardens with water, and we haven't figured that out yet. But it's something that's coming, and we don't know logistics or any of the particulars, but hopefully that's coming, and it's coming soon. John?
Yeah.
Oh, and then Norma.
Want to call someone else? Okay. This is actually something that the city is interested too. I know a while back, and I think we had some discussions, I forgot who it was with, a number of jurisdictions are working on permanent housing for previously homeless individuals. And many of these are very small, few hundred square feet units. And one of the things I know there's been discussion on was a pilot program so that your water connection fee for a single family home is not applied to these units, because one, their water demand is significantly less. And I know the analysis we did on some projects we were looking at is that your water connection fee for single family would make those projects financially challenging and harder to implement. And I think that is so important as a policy matter. They've been, again, I don't know what the status of the pilot is, but given that we're working on some projects now, it doesn't, as you know, it doesn't make sense. You look at, water demand when you calculate these. So if you have a 300 square foot kind of unit, its connection fee should be different than a 1,500 square foot unit. So I don't know. Yeah.
And, just
I think
so-
I'd written a letter to the board about that a couple of years ago.
Yes, yeah, so one of the things we did, the board passed just last year, is we updated our capacity charges, so we significantly reduced our capacity charges, some of them by half. We created a new capacity charge for multifamily, for when the units are 500 square feet or less, that's even lower.
Right.
And then we also have a pilot, but we're trying to find somebody who's interested to look at how we might look at the connection fee. So maybe this is a good example to have a community benefit. And so if you could connect us, we can see
I'll
what
talk
we
to
can
you
do.
for with our health department. Yeah, that's perfect.
Okay. Norma? Yeah.
Thank you.
And then Cheryl.
You just remind me of something, John. Another possible opportunity for another type of dwelling that's increasingly going to be popping up is the accessory dwelling units, and how those might fit in with plans that you might have in the future. Thanks, Chris, for talking about the RENA numbers. So it's the California Department of Housing and Community Development that you want to talk to, and they have a dashboard about what the status of those plans are. My question to you is about the the recreational use of water intersects with the waters that we've been talking about for industrial and household use. So we are surrounded by natural beauty. I consider it an amenity in the city of Pinole because we've got the watershed running through our city, and then we also have the bay. And so I'm wondering how EBMUD works with the conservation district in the county to help augment, not specifically funding. We can always have more, and we always want more. But I'm talking about human resources, people who actually have their positions to be involved with things related to water, and can augment the volunteers who are the local heroes that continually try to clean up because of litter everywhere. That eventually gets into the watershed. And I'm thinking we can't really isolate recreational use of water with the water that we've been talking about for industrial and household use. So please help me out in trying to understand who works, how does it work, do you at all intersect, does EBMUD intersect in some way with the conservation district?
Well, my answer is I'm not sure, probably, but I can tell you it's up to cities and counties. You're talking about water use for recreational purposes. It's the city of Pinole, city of Hercules, city of Richmond. Those are all of your issues. They're not East Bay MUD issues. We are here to help conserve. You know, I drive around Richmond and I see water overflowing in the medians and in the parks. You know, it's outrageous. Who do you talk to? Public Works. But when you talk about water being used for recreational purposes, that is a city function and it's not an East Bay MUD function.
So let me clarify if I may. It's not about using water, I misspoke, or didn't make myself clear enough. But it's having the natural amenities that are filled with water, or watershed, and trying to keep them as pristine as possible. I don't think that's an isolated issue particular to cities, which is why my question, how can we work with EBMUD to maintain that pristine condition so that those remain clean because they affect our cities?
And it affects our total water source.
That's it.
Okay, as well.
Yes.
So we'd be happy to work with your city, every city, within this ward, probably within the district. So we're happy to. So let's talk about partnering and doing more to assist each other in that endeavor. Make sense?
It does make sense when we're surrounded by all the consumables that we have that eventually make their way to our waterways. Yeah. Thank you.
Cheryl.
Yes. Where'd he go?
Clifford or John?
I'm thinking maybe, it was about the recreation.
Yes.
Mike, you want to talk about?
I think he wanted to say something first.
Oh,
And then I
okay.
wanted to
I
say
was,
something to
I
you.
was just saying, I'm the one to talk to you about that
Excellent.
program. So, East Bay MUD manages about 29,000 acres of watershed land in the East Bay, another 28,000 acres in the foothills. But here in the East Bay, out of that 29,000 acres, its primary main purpose is to protect water quality in our reservoirs. So in addition to that, we provide recreation, Lafayette Reservoir, right here San Pablo Reservoir, as well as trails. So we have a lot of people on our lands, a lot of use. We also have a significant problem with illegal dumping, right? So I'm sure that's a problem. I know it's a problem for the county and many cities as well, right? I think there's definitely a place where we could all work together. We're working already with the counties. I don't know if we've engaged the cities directly. We have a problem in Pinole. Out on our watershed land, out Castro Ranch Road, we have a problem in that area as well. So, as well as here in this area. So, it is a problem, it's a growing problem, and it's one that we're happy to collaborate on.
Be in touch.
Okay.
Exactly.
Cheryl. And then, sure.
Exactly. And Nat just said it. Yeah, I didn't have a question. I did have a statement though. Miss Lesa, our director, Lesa McIntosh, made a statement earlier. Cheryl said it, by the way. The vice president of West County Wastewater, and Mr. Chin said something earlier about the relationship between East Bay MUD and West County Wastewater. And I wanted to say that we enjoy this great partnership. But one of the things that some of you don't know is how much we've been able to rely on East Bay MUD, and especially Miss Lesa. A few weeks ago, what you probably don't know is that Miss Lesa came out to a water policy workshop. She said she hasn't done one of these since 2019. But what she did do was she came to, I put on a water policy workshop with Miss Buffy Wicks a few weeks ago. And Miss Lesa came and represented East Bay MUD very, very well. And she sat as a panelist. And she came out on a busy Saturday, beautiful Saturday. And that room at Dianza High School was full. People gave up their Saturday to come and listen to water. And she came and spoke about some of these same water issues, sir. And whenever we call her to talk about water, she has been there these last few years. So while she may not have done one of these formal gatherings, she has been there to talk about it. And the other thing I wanted to say about DIE was the A on the end. She has been the component, the chief champion for diversity, for equity, diversity, inclusion, and access. So I wanted to say that. I wanted to make sure I said it out loud and in public about how great a partner that EBMUD has been, but especially with Ms. Lesa.
Thank you.
So thank you.
Thank you, Sharon. So, wait, we've got you, and then you're next, and then we'll take you last, Don.
Okay, I live in a common housing development. We own 450 units and we all own it together. About 1,000 some odd people, about 1,100, 1,200 people live in there. Many are seniors. I wonder if they can get a discount on their water because a lot of these people are just plain poor. They're unemployed.
Yeah, Clifford spoke, or Clifford, or I believe it's Clifford,
But there's only
about
one-
our CAP program at East Bay Mud.
There's only one bill that comes in though.
For the whole unit.
So
And
there's
then we all
probably
split it.
1 meter for the entire development.
There's actually 4 meters for the entire development.
You know, pass that information along and we can check into it,
All right,
okay?
thank you.
All right, yes, ma'am.
Thank you. Maureen Brennan, Rodeo Sanitation District. And I'm just gonna start off by saying I love to take baths. And I really cut back, but I have a sump pump in my bathroom closet. And I pump it out the window into a giant garbage can and use it in my garden. But I do have a question, mostly directed at Jerry, and it has to do with staffing. I mean, staffing is the structure of everything we do, you know, sanitation department, wastewater, everything. And do you find that we are shooting ourselves in the foot by requiring junior college classes for these kids? My district manager, we're constantly short on staffing, and he says, I can teach these kids how to do pumps, that's what we do in sanitation. You know, you fix your pumps all the time and do, you know, certain technologies, but he says the JC classes aren't helping us and it keeps kids out of our profession. Do you find problems with that?
Well, one of the things we have been having conversations about is looking at minimum qualifications for roles, and how can we continue to look at whether the minimum qualifications have to require college educations or not. So we're trying to, and I think we're looking at first level has been, how can we put substitutionary language in there? So how can we, instead of just saying this requires 24 units, can we instead say that again, if it's a position that requires certain levels of experience, that we identify that experience and then accept certain levels of experience in lieu of the educational factors. The other thing has been, especially for entry-level positions, is then us looking at how do we work with pre-apprentice programs. So not just the community colleges, but you know, she mentioned Richmond Build and Cypress Mandela, looking at organizations like that that are working with people to do kind of a combination of skills development in terms of math skills, which are kind of required for a lot of the positions, but again, not necessarily classroom math, but certain levels of math that are required for general things that we need to do. So we've been looking at how do we partner with those entities that are addressing those things that aren't necessarily requiring the degree requirements, but how can we then look at transitioning those individuals into opportunities, which kind of gets into the internships I was mentioning. How can we get them into internships in the organization, learn the trades, or learn whatever specific work is, so they can be qualified for permanent positions.
And maybe I'll just add on to that real quickly. So all of our entry-level positions coming in doesn't require any college education whatsoever, either 8th grade or high school. And not only are we looking at it, we are actually making the changes. So, you know, the problem of academic inflation, where you're requiring more education than was really required. So the assistant superintendent, the superintendent position, those classifications are being changed as we speak to remove that as a requirement, instead of focusing on what knowledge, skills, and abilities you need to do the job. Now, the college may help you in certain areas, but it won't screen you out. And so those changes are happening as we speak.
That is super important. My neighbor, he applied for the operator in training, you know, job at the sanitation district. But he has no math skills. He's a special ed kid. But he's smart, and he learns in different ways. He can't go to college. He can't have those math skills that you're describing. However, and it saddens me that there's a lot of kids being shut out from our staffing.
All of our operator positions, you just need a high school degree.
That's cool.
Don, you had one other question, and then we'll go with Ms. Coulter Peoples.
Thank you very much. By the way, my name is Don Gosney. I'm the retired president of the Plumbers and Steamfitters Local 342. I used to manage billion-dollar projects in the oil refineries. I mention this only because we would never just jump into a project and say, we're going to build this new unit here. We'd have to look at every aspect of it. This leads me on to something that Supervisor Joya was talking about with the replacement of regular gas-fired water heaters with electric heaters, and it's particularly tankless water heaters, and I would love to have one in my own house. But you've got to look at the impediments. What is going to prevent people, especially the city of Richmond, where more than half of the houses are 75 years or older. They don't have the electrical capacity because it requires a dedicated circuit for one of those. The permit alone for the water heater is $400 to $600. The permit alone for the dedicated circuit is another $300 to $500. The cost to put in that dedicated circuit is a couple of $1,000s. And so you look at the people that we live with. I'm looking here at Joey, because you live in the same city I do. We all know how poor we all are. Dirt poor. And so we can't afford something like that. If a person can go to Home Depot and buy a gas-fired hot water heater for $250 and a $50 permit, they're going to go that route as opposed to spending thousands and thousands of dollars if they can even if it's even possible. Their electrical service panel may not be able to afford an additional dedicated circuit for that. Same thing with our electric automobiles. If we could afford them, you need a dedicated circuit to be able to plug into it. And we just don't have the capacity yet. I had to spend just recently $5,500 to replace my service panel. I had one piece of cable that was at $100 a foot. $100 a foot for this cable. And that was a $1,000 cable. People just can't afford these kinds of things. So we have to find some way to work with our communities. If we want to transition to tankless water heaters that are much more efficient, we need to be able to work with our cities. So you've got to be able to work with us on the permitting. You can't necessarily help out on the contractors coming in and do that, because that's not exactly. I've read all the how-to books and seen the videos. That's not something nobody wants to do on their own. You actually need somebody that's qualified to do it.
Yeah,
Just a thought.
And that's why I asked John about the funding mechanism.
Yeah.
So John,
All the issues Don's raised are the same issues I've raised at the Air District, and I think it's important to note, the state, with or without the community, the state is working on this rule statewide. And the reason its rule wouldn't take effect until 2030 is exactly to address all the issues you raised. And frankly, let me just say one thing. Remanufacturing, one of the largest water heater manufacturers in the country, just came out with a 120 volt, 15 amp heat pump, electric heat pump water heater, which the life cycle energy cost of that water heater are way less than gas. And right now, you have a control on your water heater that's on a 15 amp circuit, so you won't have to do all this wiring that you talk about as soon as all these manufacturers now announce plans for 120 volt. In fact, that's what I'm going to probably put in my house. It's a replacement. There are many issues like permitting, and there will remain, I think, electrical load issues, which is exactly why the state and the Air District are not implementing it today. It's going to be over a 7-year period to exactly work out all of those, and we expect the technology to be what REAM is doing. You'll be able to take 120 volt, you'll plug it into your existing panel, and not have to do extra wiring. Those are the kind of issues you resolve over 7 years. That's what the state is doing, and what the Air District is doing is looking at how do we subsidize this in older homes. Sounds like you listened to a lot of the comments I personally made at our last 2 Air District meetings. I made exactly many of the comments you made, and that's why we have a working group at the Air District. The state's doing the same with environmental justice organizations, manufacturers, contractors. I think the permitting issues are important. So yeah, today, not possible without a lot of cost. 7 years from now, with all this work, hopefully that's where we'll be, because the energy savings from that are tremendous. So that's where, and I think working with the Water District on this is important. And these are all tough issues to work through, right? They are. And but I'm optimistic that over periods of time, the technology is improving so fast today. So I think, but we need to get by these issues, and we're going to need money to subsidize low-income folks, especially in older homes, that
That's
need
me.
more upgrades.
There's also the electrical code issue on dedicated, a dedicated circuit.
Yeah, yeah, and now, like, this one, that Ream has can run on a shared circuit. You can run it,
Okay.
it's set up, so you can run it on a dedicated circuit, or they have a model on a shared circuit. So when you're not using power, it'll go to the water heater. So there's a lot of technology changes, so thanks for raising those.
So Jackie and then Annie?
I've got two questions. I've lived in my neighborhood since 1984, which is northeastern Richmond. And I've discovered that I have neighbors that have wells, backyard wells in their backyards, and they don't get water, I don't think, from East Bay Mud. And they use the well water for drinking and cooking. Is there a program that my neighbors should seek with East Bay Mud to make sure that their water is potable?
There are programs out there, not only that we can help you to make sure that they're doing something that's safe for themselves, that we can provide advice, but we also want to make sure that their wells aren't cross-connected with our distribution system. We've had wells cross-connect our distribution system that pumps water back into our system, and we have to make sure there's proper backflow to prevent that. So if we can get your information,
Same thing on
we
the
will connect your
sewer
neighbors
systems.
with East Bay Mud. And just so you know, for single-family homes,
Yes.
we, for the backflow protection and the checking,
It's legal.
we pay for it.
Okay.
We pay for it.
Wonderful, I'll tell them.
So,
All right, and
And
we
my-
won't
my-
tell that you.
We're gonna erase this part from the tape.
I've got one more question, and I was really concerned about Flint, Michigan, and the poisonous water that those citizens were drinking. Is there any, and this is directed at you, I don't know your name, but you were talking about the infrastructure and changing the pipes and that kind of thing. Is there anything or any risk that we as the consuming public should be aware of, that our water may be contaminated when these pipes and infrastructures are changed?
yeah, the short answer is no. So East Bay Mud, back when the federal government put out what they call the lead and copper rule, we, decades ago, removed every lead component from our system. And we, in the last 5 years, we went through all of our records again, manually, every 400,000 paper record, to make sure we didn't miss anything. We missed a handful of them, and we removed that lead. So every known lead component or lead service in our service area has been removed.
And one last thing, with our drinking water out of the well, out of our faucets, is there a department that East Bay Mud has that we can have them to check to see whether that drinking water out of our faucets is
Yes.
contaminated?
Yeah, so again, give us your contact information. We'll get our water quality group to contact you. We will give you a free lead testing, because even though there's no lead in our water, your fixtures may be older and have lead in it. And then we will give you a free test kit to run, and you don't have to pay for any of that.
Wonderful, thank you. What's your name again?
Clifford Chan.
Jackie, this is our general manager. Okay.
Very nice to meet you.
Annie.
Thank you. My question is, have there been a conversation by looking at what has taken place with individuals changing their electric and using actually having the panels put in? You know, so what is, where is that conversation, with the solar panels and to generate the electrical use, at this point? Have that conversation been, looking at, to look at that, to generate any electricity, to look at the support of looking at the water heaters and the different tanks that may be in the works? Many people have solar now, you know, they have solar, so.
We don't do any of the electrical portion, we're just the water company.
Right, yeah, but is it a conversation, I mean, has that been entertained?
Not as part of what we're doing, but I think Supervisor Joy was asking is, maybe we can attach some information about other programs, not related to East Bay MUD programs, but just to get the word out. We can certainly look at how we might be able to do that portion. But just understanding that a tankless water heater or a heat pump water heater, that will save you a lot of energy, it doesn't save you water.
It's not a tankless. Somebody else had, Claudia, you had another question?
I just want to have a comment in terms of like, the reason why we are here trying to save water is also the overall impact of climate change and a fossil fuel economy in which we are cooking ourselves and putting more and more CO2 in our air. So that thing about going from not using gas, not using fossil fuel to charge or houses is a good way. And I am a mom, I have 2 kids, and I want to leave my kids a good world. That is not just a world that every year we are seeing La Niña, El Niño, and all of these things. So thank you for, this is really a great conversation. So we can start thinking about the future of our kids and take the measures that are needed in the political arena and as individuals, but in the political arena, to be bold, to have policies that really address the underlying conversation that is here, is that the climate change is impacting us in severe terms. Here in California is droughts. In other parts is a lot of water, and it's not going to change if we don't change the policies that is making us to depend on fossil fuels, and it's making us to have more and more CO2 to the air and more pollution. So thank you.
Thank you, Claudia, for that. And on that note, thank you for those comments, Claudia. On that note, I see people are getting restless. So thank you all for coming today and you have
Do you need a ride for your car? This one is going to be,
okay, the shuttle is over. All right. So thank you all for coming.